All right, let's speak to Rula Amin, who's in the Syrian capital, Damascus. Rula, bring us up to speed first with the latest from Homs. And is the picture any clearer as to what exactly happened there overnight?
What we know is that past that funeral yesterday, many took part of the funeral, about tens and tens of thousands of people. But following the funeral, a few thousand people took to that square and staged a sit-in. Now, we spoke to a couple of eyewitnesses who were there, and they said it was a peaceful protest. They wanted the prisoners to be released. They had a few demands. The security was around, but there was no friction. There was some mediation. The security kept away. As the day advanced, and by midnight, obviously the security said, you can't stay here and you cannot have this sit-in. And then the protesters refused to leave. And that's when the gunshots started, and that's when the sit-in and the protesters were dispersed. Now, what we know is that this has been the fear of the government, is that people would be emboldened by what had been happening here for a month, by the president's remark and offer to make concessions. So you'll see now more people taking to the streets, and they're trying to take the Egyptian example of trying to stage a sit-in. It's very peaceful. They want to take to the ground until their demands are met.
And I was going to ask you, in fact, Rula, when the protests began just a few weeks ago in Dara, the demands were for reforms, but now we're hearing calls for regime change. What's happened between then and now?
Obviously, with every day that passes and no significant reforms are introduced, the list of demands by the protesters is getting longer and their goals higher. Now, not all those who are protesting are demanding to topple the regime, but some are. You can hear more and more people now raising that slogan. Some are saying still they want reforms to be introduced. If this government, if this regime introduces it, fine enough. If not, they're going all the way. What's happening here is that every day we are seeing more protests, more people taking part. How far will the protesters go, and how much will the government take before it starts even a more severe crackdown? That's what we're watching.
Do you think we've reached a tipping point?
One thing not yet, but I think both the protesters and the government are walking a fine line. Yesterday, the foreign minister met with the foreign ambassadors here in Damascus, and he's told them that peaceful protest is something that the government will tolerate. There are legitimate demands, and the government's vision and program to introduce reform will continue. However, he did warn that there are Salafist groups, there are armed groups that is attacking security, and that's not something that will be tolerated, and the government will use everything at its disposal to stop that.
Okay, thank you very much, Rula Amin, live there in Damascus for us.